Hello YouTubies, this is Joker Scribe and thanks for watching one of my most amazing YouTube videos. Now a few years ago I came across a YouTuber by Paul Check and something struck me. I mean, I knew about this already, we've all known about it really, but we tend to not see it. And he was talking about nutrition and he said, suddenly out of the blue, he said when people are nutritionally deficient, they become more animal-like, they become more aggressive, ruder, obnoxious. And that struck me as being true, because if you look in Aldi and Netto and places like that, you will see the rudest people you can possibly imagine. And the lower quality of the food, the ruder these people become. Poor people tend to be ruder in a way than middle class. It's not always true, because you do get some people who are psychotic or psychopathic, but on the whole, when you judge it and when you look at it, it is true. These poorer people who are on the dole or whatever it is called now, when they don't have much money and when they have less nutritional value in their food, they are more aggressive, they are more rude, and they do get into more fights than anybody else. That is true, there's no denying it. They are more uptight individuals than anybody else, and they have a right to be, because technically they're not getting much. And it struck me as being very interesting, because I think if we can change this factor of society, you can make society much better for people to live in. And they did an experiment, well, I'm not sure if it was 2 or 3 years ago, it might have been longer than that, where they went into prisons. And one experiment was particularly interesting, and I'm not sure why it's not really been published properly, but they suddenly, for no reason whatsoever, decided to experiment on these inmates by just increasing the nutritional value of the food. What happened? Well, something very, very interesting happened. The inmates became less antisocial within weeks. They weren't antisocial. They walked in, they were absolutely shocked at the level of how much antisocialness had dropped in the prison. Despite the fact they'd not told anybody in the prison, or the inmates at least, that there was more nutritional value in the food, these inmates were behaving better than anybody else. They were just behaving like normal people. And some people will say, well, they're being manipulative. Well, they weren't told. They're just behaving like normal people. And there was another doctor that suddenly had me thinking even higher about this, because he was talking about hypoglycemic. You meet anybody who's hypoglycemic, they will be the rudest people you can imagine. It can also be the most violent when they need a fix. It's like anybody on drugs. When they need a fix, they will rob anybody, they will batter anybody. Even if they are nice people deep down, they still do the worst things, because it's like a fix and the body is in the animal flight or fight state, and because of that they act out. This is what antisocial personality is all about. And hypoglycemic and also diabetes can cause people to be like this. I don't understand then the fact that they know that hypoglycemic and the sugar rush can make people very aggressive with each other, that they decide to put a load of it in our food and replace it with the fat. Hence why at the moment we've got 1 in 4, well, it's probably higher than this, 1 in 4 young people who are aggressive. We've got 1 in 22 people who are classed as psychopaths. Antisocial also classed in that same region, so it's actually higher with the antisocial. It might be 1 in 15 people who are partially antisocial, yet they're flooding us with all this bloody sugar, which is known to cause hypoglycemic or hypoglycemia, and by doing so people become more aggressive. I think that's actually kind of like they're trying to make sure we fight against each other all the time, because it's well known that if you give kids a lot of sugar, they will become extremely they will have more temper tantrums, they will be more energetic, more aggressive, jumping over the place, irritating people, etc. So it does have an effect, this stuff. So when I watched, something like Paul Chek talking about the nutritional value and how lacking in certain things can make people more violent, it then struck me that's actually kind of a serious thing that's going on. We need to get more fat back into our diet, the saturated fat, because that's the thing we're mostly made of. We don't need this sugar, because the sugar is actually what's causing people to be more aggressive with each other anyway. And there's a lot of aggression in society. I don't care what anybody says. I think it's like split down in the middle. I think it's like 1 in 3 people who are aggressive to other people, rude to other people. And it's seen, I see it all the time. So another thing I'd like to mention is something even more interesting. Apart from the antisocial personality disorders that certain people have, which I think is caused by this sort of sugar rush and also some lack of nutrition, we can more or less say taking too much sugar will cause people to become more aggressive, so will alcohol, etc. But there's also another thing that I'd like to talk about, which is psychopathy. Now, I remember years ago, and this really blew me away, because I'm not even sure why this is not even in the media properly. There was this professor of some kind who was talking about how psychopathy might actually be caused by a virus. Not the type of virus that controls the body or whatever, a viral infection that might actually stop part of the neurons firing properly, or might take over a small area of the brain, causing the lack of empathy in certain people, or also stopping other areas of the brain working properly, causing things like autism and you name what else. And that struck me as very interesting, because then I decided to have a look at the people who were classed as psychopaths on the internet, and people have actually admitted to being it. And I sort of was hanging with my jaw down, because I've never noticed this before. There's something very interesting with the necks of psychopaths. Now, people might say, well, psychopaths can look different, but there was something very interesting, because almost 90% of them that I saw had this sort of raggedy neck. How can I explain it? The lymph nodes are in the neck, yeah, and that's where all the antibodies are made. And when this is active, it tends to swell up a bit. And I noticed that in some of these psychopaths, they had like swelling of the neck area. I don't know what it means really, but that could just say that the immune system is working. But why would the immune system be working? Because it's working everybody else, but why would it be working overtime in a psychopath? Maybe it's because there might be a viral infection somewhere. Not saying that it is caused by that. I'm just saying I thought it was very interesting what one of the doctors said about psychopathy, that it might actually be a sort of viral related disease. But then again, that could just be a total myth. So I'm not really going to say that's 100% true. I just found it interesting. Apart from that, the antisocialness is definitely caused by a lack of nutrition. You see it you see it when people are buying the wrong type of food. These people become more aggressive all the time. And I think we've got to do something about that, because if it continues on, everybody's going to be in road rage, everybody's going to be getting in fights in the street, and the society will crack eventually. Why are we letting these companies put so much sugar in our food? I don't get it. And in fact, I could have like a Mars bar with half the amount of sugar that they put in there, but they say, oh, we've got to cut out the saturated fat. But that's interesting, because the saturated fat is the thing that makes you feel better in the long run. And just cutting out the saturated fat and replacing it with sugar, all the calories, by the way, isn't helping anybody. And it's certainly not working on the general population. Look how much weight they've been putting on. So I don't know, maybe I've just rambled on a bit too much on this video, but I like to know what other people think. I like to know what the trolls think. I'm sure you go say something about psychopathy, it's not caused by vows. Fine, it might not be, I'm not saying it is. I'm just saying that there's something interesting there, because there's been one or two of those psychopaths who have died from brain tumours. Yeah, so that is known to be caused by vow related things too. Look at one of the, what's his name, Manson, when he was sending out those people to kill. There was one particular psychopath woman there, and she died of a brain tumour years later. I find that kind of interesting, because if a brain tumour was developing, it would knock out the empathy in the brain anyway. Bingo, there you go, there's something to think about. So yeah, what do you guys think? I know this is not a totally scientific video, but you guys must think that there is a relation somewhere between nutrition and behaviour. And of course there is. You don't give children a lot of sugar because they act out. So obviously there is a link. But what do you think we should do about it? Anyway, thank you for listening, and goodbye.